It's a great day to talk hockey on HabsCast.
Yes, it's a fine morning to be talking hockey with, well, the guys that are on in the afternoon. If you ever tune into TSN 1200, The Drive, it's hosted by AJ and CJ Stevenson, Chris, and AJ Jakubec. CJ is often off and on with AJ, and they're a great tandem. So I'm really pleased that both of you could join me on the eve of the first big match of the year between Ottawa and Montreal coming up tomorrow night at the Bell Center. Thanks for being here, gentlemen.
My pleasure.
Always. Yep.
Great. So this is quite a battle. We'll have a look here quickly at the standings, and that's not the standings. We're gonna have to fire our production guy here. Okay, Red Wings and the Habs on top. Maple Leafs on the bottom. I had to put this up because we don't see this every day, right? Could it be any tighter, gentlemen? 5 points separating first and last.
No, it couldn't be. And I guess it's kind of like what we probably expected this year, because I think everybody expected the Senators to continue to rise up. I think people expected the Habs to continue to rise up. Buffalo, I never know what's going to happen with the Sabres. Every year you kind of think with the talent that they have that this is going to be a year when they get better. I feel like we, been saying it for the last few years. Everybody felt the time was going to come when the Bruins were going to have a fall off, and maybe Tampa, maybe Florida, and we've seen that a little bit in the beginning of this year, that some of those up and coming teams have been better. I think it's way too early still to be thinking about Tampa or Florida being outside of the playoff picture. But as they fall behind in the early part of the season, it gets more interesting, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. With Barkov out, I think it's safe to say that Florida, going into the year after they'd re-signed everybody, obviously won a second straight cup. I think it was difficult not to pick them to be the division winners. But when you lose, arguably a top three center in the league who wins the Selke Trophy, who puts up 100 points, that's quite a void, right? And it's tough. I mean, they have Evan Rodriguez centering the top line now. That safe to say that's a downgrade.
Yes, and not having Matthew Tkachuk,
right?
Maybe until Christmas as well. So, I mean, Barkov clearly the best player on that team. And can we stop saying that he's like the most underrated player in the league? Every year when they do those player polls, Barkov almost always comes out near the top of the list as one of the most underrated. I mean, at some point you appreciate his skill and what he does, that it's not a surprise to anybody that he does what he does in terms of
right,
how impactful he is at both ends of the rink. So yeah, let's stop saying that Barkov's the one of the most underrated players in the league. I think we all appreciate his greatness and his importance to the Panthers. But yeah, with not having Tkachuk, not having Barkov, I don't know if you've been following the story too. Brad Marchand taking a little bit of a leave of absence from the team to go and be with his best friend whose daughter passed away from cancer. Marchand's been back in Halifax helping coach the friend's team, and but way too early, I think, to be worried about the Panthers. I think when all is said and done, they'll be there. I'm not so sure now about Tampa. They got a win last night, but I don't know. AJ, are you sold on both the Florida teams making the playoffs for sure this year?
I do think both of them are going to make it, but I think there's opportunity. When I look at these two teams set to play on Saturday, I think there's opportunity for them to be top three, to be even battling for top spot in the division. And I'm not going to count out Florida and Tampa Bay, because do that at your peril. The East has gone through those two franchises the last 6 years. Tampa, 3 straight appearances and 2 Stanley Cups, and now Florida's done the same thing in a different order. So I'll write those teams off at my peril, but I do think there's opportunity for, the Senators and the Canadiens. I thought there was opportunity before the season for both of them to take a jump, especially with the Leafs, who, I'm not so sure they're going to be a playoff team. I thought so at the start of the year, but I thought they'd take a step back. I thought they'd be a wild card team. I mean, losing Mitch Marner, say what you will about, maybe
Yeah.
some of the lack of production and it's not so much in the playoffs, like games 1 through 4, but as the series have gone on, 5, 6, 7, it's been notable that Marner and his production hasn't been at the level that it was earlier in playoff series and certainly in the regular season. But no matter what you say about that, he's a 100-point guy, and they're going to, and I think they already do miss that, and especially Austin Matthews. So
Yeah.
it does feel like there's opportunity for, up and coming teams. And I don't know if Detroit is there yet or not. I guess we'll see another 10, 15 games to see if they are. But I do think, based on what we saw from both Ottawa and Montreal last year, and certainly from the Habs early on, and after a bit of a tough start, I think, Ottawa's 4-1-1. And I do think both of these teams are ready to take a step. And that makes for a real interesting dynamic within the division, with teams that look like they're on the rise and other teams that, you're trying to knock them off their perch.
And just your point about Marner, there's players that get you to the playoffs, and there's players that help you win in the playoffs, and the superstars do both. But to your point, I mean, if nothing else, Marner's one of those guys that helps you get to the playoffs with 100 points every year. And I said this to you on the show yesterday, AJ, about how much does it diminish Matthews not having Marner there? So you don't just lose Marner's 100 points. It'll be interesting to see as this season unfolds, as they search for chemistry there in Toronto. How much is Austin Matthews going to be impacted by Marner's absence as well?
Yeah, well, I thought, I look back and I was trying to think of, it's not often that you lose 100-point scorer from your team in his prime for basically nothing, right? I think the last time it happened was when Joe Thornton got traded from Boston to San Jose, and it wasn't for nothing. It was they got a couple pieces back, but nothing near the value of Joe Thornton. And Boston, like, they had a huge dip in their point total the next year. You just losing 100-point scorer, it just impacts your team. Like, well, Barkov, look at Florida without Barkov, right? It's funny. Like, I read a couple of Leaf fans. I saw a stat before the year was, well, Matthews's goal scoring, like goals per game, were higher with Marner out of the lineup than with him. And there were Leafs fans suggesting that he would score even more because of that. And I'm thinking, no, I don't think so. That's your basic, your setup man, Marner. He's one of the best playmakers in the league,
Yeah.
And I don't think Matthews will score. I'd be surprised if he scores 50 this year, but I mean, if you look at the standings, gentlemen, it's what stands out for me too is the goal differential. It's just how close. Like, the top team is the Canadiens with a +7 goal differential, and -4 is the low in the division. I know it's early, but I think this I think this may come down to the last weekend to decide first place and decide who gets into the playoffs this year. It's going to be so fun down the stretch, I think, this year, right?
Yeah, I don't think that's a bad prognostication, and I think just like we're talking about, we're seeing, that some teams on the rise, some teams on the way down, and it feels like this season could be one of those years where you kind of have the intersection of the formerly elite teams in the division on their way down, and then some of those teams like Montreal and Ottawa on their way up, and everybody's scuffling for pretty close to the same point totals as they diminish for the formerly elite teams and they elevate for the teams on their way up.
Well, it's just too. I think years and years of Tampa, Toronto, and Boston in particular, trading away first-round draft picks and second-round draft picks to win now. It eventually catches up with you because you look at their under 25 talent, both on the team and in the organization. It's pretty depleted for all those teams, and eventually, as your core gets older and they're no longer in their prime and might still be good players, but maybe their skills are diminishing a little bit. You see the teams that have built, Ottawa with their three, with that great draft, of course, where they got Sanderson and Stützle and Gregg, and eventually when those young players get closer to their prime, then they rise up and challenge these teams. Boston is already on the decline, and I think it may be, it may not be instant, but Toronto, Tampa, Florida start to come back to the pack now. What do you think, AJ?
Well, it starts with Boston. You can like we were waiting for years, like even before they had that record point total. Like I didn't think they were going to make the playoffs that year, and they proved me and a lot of other people wrong. But eventually, you knew it was coming, and here we are. I mean, Morgan Geekie is on an absolute heater, and Pasternak's a top 10 player in the league. And even with those guys, a pretty decent blue line. They got Swayman in goal, and like they're the one team. If I look at the division, where I say I'm not feeling it for playoffs. Like I could see a path for Detroit if they're for real. I can see a path even for Buffalo. I mean, every time Buffalo plays Ottawa, they look like world beaters, and then they go back to kind of looking like the usual selves of the Sabres. I'll believe the Sabres turn the corner when I actually see it, having been out of the playoffs 14 years in a row. But like Boston's really the only team I'm going to write off at this stage, because like when we saw them here, for that 7-2 defeat, like they just don't look like they don't even look as good as Calgary, and Calgary's got the worst record in the league. Calgary just can't score, but structurally they play well. Like the Bruins look like a team that's going to be bottom 5 or 6 in the league, and they just, like, you're right, they just don't have enough. You can't win with two guys scoring all your goals and think that it's going to pay off. You need some of that backfill. You need some of those younger guys to chip in, and some of those other teams have enough scoring to be able to offset. I don't know if Toronto's got enough to offset Mitch Marner to be a contender, but I still think they have enough scoring to offset those 100 points to be a playoff team if they get their crap together. But Boston, I'm just not feeling it. I just don't know where else the scoring is going to come from, and I'm not even convinced that Geekie's going to be on this kind of pace. Pastrnak, yes, but is Geekie really going to score, another 31 goals in the next 40 some odd games? I'm not feeling that. Maybe I'm going to be proven wrong there, but that doesn't look like a playoff team to me at all.
I was sitting with the scouts down at the end of the press box last night for the first period, and your buddy Todd White, AJ, had a trivia question for us. He's like, who do you think leads the National Hockey League in goals since January 5th? Anyway, we were all guessing, and it's the guy that you mentioned. It's Morgan Geekie has the most goals since January 5th in the National Hockey League. So you're right. Can he sustain it? I guess Bruins fans better hope so, because as you said, they've got pretty limited, it looks like, high-end skill in terms of goal scoring. I mean, Pasternak's going to get his, but I wasn't impressed with the Bruins the other night either.
Sorry, CJ. He certainly fooled the scouts. I know in his draft year, too soft, can't skate, and now to his credit, he's not soft anymore, and and he improved his skating. So kudos to him for working hard in the off seasons and developing into one of the big surprises. I have to admit, I have to agree with you guys as far as I would not have predicted that at any point in his career he would go through a 10-month stretch and be the league's top goal scorer.
Mm-hmm.
But just I just want to bring this up here. In the last, the Canadiens are 8-3, but team that they're facing tomorrow night is 8-3 when it comes to playing against the Habs in the last 11 games. Obviously, last year Montreal turned it around after a stretch where I think the Sens went 7 straight wins. But you can see here last year the Habs won 3 of 4. For their sake, that hopefully the Sens being on such a heater when it comes to playing the Habs is over. But any thoughts on tomorrow night's game without Brady Tkachuk? Do you think that evens the playing field a little bit when it comes to these two teams?
I
Go
do.
ahead, AJ.
Yeah, I just think like Brady, ever since the Habs went Kotkaniemi over him, I don't have to. I know that's a sore spot, and for good reason. That happens though. We see that all the time in the NHL, and like Columbus is hearing about that right now with Demidov, right, taking Lindstrom ahead of him, but he just seems ultra motivated. I mean, he is anyways, and he's such a competitive guy, but he just brings that little bit extra every time he's against Montreal, trying to prove them wrong for what happened in that draft. And so no doubt that's a loss. That's a factor in this rivalry. But yeah, I think it's going to be fantastic. There is genuine hate between these teams. Like I think, to me, the number one rivalry in the NHL right now, and I do think people don't want to admit it because of where they're located, but you look at 4 of the last 6 Stanley Cups, you look at the last 6 Eastern Conference titles, and you look at the fact that they've met 4 times in the playoffs in those years, and each team has won twice, and there's been some battles in preseason, including Ottawa, Montreal, but Tampa, Florida, to me, is the best rivalry in hockey right now, just because of all of that. And I happen to be going to Florida to watch soccer, and we're going to go to a Panthers game, and it happens to be the one after the Lightning Panthers game, and the tickets are about 6 times more affordable for the Canucks on a Monday than it is for the Lightning on a Saturday. So people are definitely jacked up down there about that rivalry as well. But this one is as good as anything else in the league right now, because there is genuine hatred, I think, between the players. It's not just lip service. It's not just, oh, we got 2 teams that are close to each other, so hate each other. No, like there's genuine dislike. And I think the fact that you've got 2 teams that, were out of the playoffs and battling to see who could get to that next level first, and they get there at the same time. Ottawa probably, behind schedule in terms of their rebuild, and the Habs definitely, at the very least, a year ahead of schedule in their rebuild. I do think that adds something to it. And when I think of, like they always talk about who's going to break the drought. Well, you got 2 teams here that I don't think are as advanced yet as, say, the Oilers or the Jets. Like if I was to say, okay, if someone's going to break the drought from Canada, and it's going to happen this year, I would say, well, it's probably the Oilers or the Jets. But both these teams are capable of doing it. If the Jets and the Oilers can't get it done, within a handful of years, both these teams are on track to be, potential Stanley Cup contenders. And, I don't even, like, I ask hockey people all the time who they think is ahead, Montreal and Ottawa, and usually they're stumped for a bit, and then they come up with an answer one way or the other. I mean, Ottawa, I think the advantage they have is they don't have to shop for a center. They've got 4 that can play in your top 3. They got a legit number 1 in Stützle. They got a legit number 2 in Pinto. Dylan Cousins, I think he's a top 6 center. But that's a guy that, has had a pretty good start to the season. as well. And you got Ridley Gregg, who can go there if you got an injury as well, and a
Yeah.
guy that could definitely play in your top
Lars
nine.
Eller,
So
Lars Eller's been great to start.
and
Yeah.
Lars Eller has been good, but if you look 5-6 years down the road, Ottawa's set there, and that's the hardest position to be set there. But when I look at Montreal, I see a team that looks like they're in good shape in every spot, with maybe the exception of their depth at center. They clearly have a great number one center in Nick Suzuki. We'll see on Oliver Kapanen. I was actually asking some scouts last night about him. But if Montreal is able to go out and get, whether it's a Nazem Kadri or whatever, then they're right there. Like right there, right now, is a team that could absolutely compete to win the East. So the fact that you had that dynamic, that both these teams look like they should be ready to compete to take a step in the East, where it's, I think, a little bit more wide open than the West. Like you've got
Absolutely.
Colorado, Vegas, Dallas, Edmonton,
I
Winnipeg,
was going to
amongst
ask
other
you that.
teams.
Yeah.
Whereas in the East, I feel like if both these teams take a step, they're right there,
Yeah.
which is exciting, because that means, maybe for the next 5 or 6 years, the path out of the division, and again, right off Florida and Tampa Bay at your own peril, but could be between these two teams. And I think both teams know that. And I think that adds a bit of a layer to this rivalry, which is already very spicy.
Yeah.
Well,
It should be a great game. I just quickly, Chris, what did the scouts say about Oliver Kapanen? You got to, have fans here. We got a lot of have fans here. What were their thoughts on Oliver Kapanen that you asked them about?
Yeah, just I think decent start, but one of the guys I talked to said limited ceiling, in terms of like thought he was a second or a third at best. Like this wasn't going to be a dynamic type of guy, but impressed with his smarts, impressed with his two-way game, and kind of wanted to see more. So I think positive, but also appreciating, especially for the here and now, that if Montreal is going to make a run, let's say as early as this year, that they're going to need that other piece, the Kadri or whoever it might be, to take the next step.
No Kadri. Sidney Crosby, thank you very much. Chris,
Aren't they 7-2-2, Grant? I don't think Pittsburgh's
I
trading
know.
Crosby in
Right.
the here and now.
No, not today. It would be at the trade deadline, and Pittsburgh would have to dive, but I think that's coming. Chris, what were you expand on what
no, just
AJ
you know what AJ's point about both Montreal and Ottawa being poised, in what is, like I said, with the decline of some of the elite teams in the Eastern Conference, and these guys rising up, the East being open. But the thing that for me contributes to a rivalry, and AJ's point about Florida and Tampa maybe being the best rivalry in the league right now, you got to be playing for something. Like both teams need to be elite and have genuine aspirations of being able to win a cup. And to me, that's why the Battle of Ontario died. I mean, it was good when both the Leafs and the Senators thought they had a chance to win the Stanley Cup in the early 2000s, and when you've got one team that's at the bottom of the standings and the other becomes elite, I mean, it just doesn't work for the rivalry. You've both got to be in a position where you can do something special, and I think that's the spot where Ottawa and Montreal are heading right now, where they both have aspirations of being elite teams in the Eastern Conference now, and to me, that's what'll add to the Montreal Ottawa rivalry at this point. And even though Toronto and Ottawa played in the playoffs last year, I still think the Ottawa Montreal rivalry right now is poised to supersede anything that they're going to have with Toronto, just because of the extracurricular stuff. And let's face it, that's what everybody's thinking about going into the game tomorrow. Or are we going to see McDermott fight Jack Eye? Is somebody going to go after Nick Cousins for his slash on Demidov in the preseason game? I mean, those are the things that particularly among the fan bases, are going to elevate the feelings of a rivalry. And they're both fighting for top spot in the Eastern Conference right now.
Well, that was so uncharacteristic of Nick Cousins to do something like that. So I don't think any of the Habs will go after him. Yeah, well, Greiba Eller, right?
Yeah.
Tell me that the rivalry wasn't inflamed at that point. All it's going to take for it to just hit massive heights, as far as I'm concerned, is a playoff matchup again, just like then, right? As soon as they meet in the playoffs, the rivalry is just going to supersede. I agree with you, AJ, on that. That it's going to supersede any other rivalry in the league. The 417 battle, the you were talking about Pinto, and I agree, by the way, that Ottawa's edge right now is at center, and it's such a key. I would give an edge to Montreal on defense right now, and on the wing. So that kind of balances out, when you talk about one team having an edge on the other. But then in goal, who knows? Right now, it looks like it's probably going to be Allmark against Montembeault tomorrow night, and I think the game may come down to who can one of them on their game and stopping their pucks, because right now they've been very inconsistent so far this season.
Dolbus, he's been the better goaltender, and I know doing this show with you earlier this season, Grant, one of the things we talked about was, who gets to play more, and my point was, that the Canadiens have moved past the kind of like the development stage where you're going to just play guys because you feel like, you need to develop them and they need to get the reps and they need the minutes. The Habs now have broken through that mindset now, and I think you're trying to get wins. So I know your question was, if Dolbus is playing better than Montembeault, who do you play? I mean, right now I think you play the guy who's going to get the majority of the ice time is going to be the guy who gives you the best chance to win at this point, regardless of reputation. And I said to AJ yesterday, I don't know if it was on the air or off the air or whatever, I'm like, Montembeault's playing his way off of the Four Nations team at this point. Like, there's not a lot of choice when it comes to Canadian goaltending.
The Olympics, yeah.
But at this point, do you have any, after his start this year, do you have any confidence in Montembeault to be a guy on the Olympic team?
No, not at all. And I think with them having 4 days off, Dovish played the last game, so the reasoning can't be, well, Dovish will be, he's been playing too much, too often. I'm surprised that they didn't come back with Dovish. What about you, AJ, or tomorrow night?
Yeah, I mean, ride the hot hand. I mean, that's what Montreal's got compared to Ottawa right now. I mean, I think Marilainen's going to be a really good goalie and obviously saved their bacon last year in the middle of the season when Ullmark went down. But he didn't have a great training camp. I do think, I always say about goalies, and I say this about all athletes, but especially about goalies, form is temporary and class is permanent. And I think both teams have two good goalies, but Dobish is clearly, when it comes to form right now, in the best form of those four. And so if you're Ottawa, I mean, we don't know who's starting right now, but I'm guessing it's going to be Ullmark. You go with your number one in this type of scenario. Marilainen played great last game, but I still think they want to get Ullmark going. So, yeah, it's been a little bit inconsistent with Ullmark for sure. On the Ottawa side, we've been talking about the screenshots and how he's got the lowest save percentage in the NHL on screenshots, like 100 less than the next guy. So is that on Ullmark for not fighting through some of the traffic? Is that on the players in front of him for allowing too much traffic? It's probably in the end a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, but it hasn't been a banner start for Linus, and he's called out himself. He's called out his teammates a little bit about an immature performance on Tuesday in Chicago. But I do think when it comes to form right now, Dobish is the guy of those four, and it is a little surprising that Montreal isn't going with him. But hey, Montembeault in the end is their guy. Is that going to be the case in 2 months? We'll wait and see. But it should be a fascinating battle to see which of those inconsistent starts might spill over into this game on Saturday night.
It's funny that you bring up the screenshots, because I figured Montembeault led the league in allowing screenshots. Like, just seems like every shot from the point is getting through. So, I think the strategy of both teams, perhaps tomorrow night, get it back to the point, screen the goalie, and come what may. We'll see if either of them can rectify that. They've both had issues with it, obviously, this year so far. Seems like every screenshot on Montembeault goes in, and it sounds like it's even worse for Ullmark. So look for a lot of point shot attempts, at the very least, tomorrow night. That's an interesting dynamic. You brought up Pinto, second line center, and I fully believe he has supplanted. I thought, even going back to last year, he was ultimately, his upside was to be a better center than Dylan Cousins, and it's looking that way so far this year. I mean, it's nice when you got two A, two B, really, right? Pinto, I've texted Chris in the past about this. It just seems like his game. You talked about Tkachuk raising his game for the Canadiens. Pinto, regular season and preseason, it seems like he just lights out against Montreal. And I said texted Chris and said, if he can play against the rest of the league like he plays against the Habs, he's a 50-goal scorer. And it looks like, I don't know if Chris forwarded that to Pinto or what, but it looks like he is now. And is he? I think he's a legitimate candidate for the U.S. Olympic team coming up. What do you guys think?
I mean, we look, so much, AJ, we base on, as you said, current form. And I think, if you want to go by recent performance, I mean, he has to be considered. And it's not just the offense. I think it's everything else that he does. I mean, you look at the number of opportunities in this young season that he's been generating, killing penalties. Like, he's become a dynamic penalty killer as well. Eller gets the shorty last night because Pinto gets the puck and moves up the ice, takes the shot, and Eller gets the rebound. I think when you look at all the aspects of his game, he's made himself really, really useful and really, really valuable. And I think when you're looking at coach's dream, one of those guys that if you're on the road and you have Shane Pinto on your bench, you're not worried about matchups at any point during a game. I think Travis Green's completely confident, no matter who the other team puts on the ice against Pinto, that they're going to be taken care of at both ends of the ice. So, if you're Bill Guerin and you're constructing your American Olympic team, how do you look past that in terms of all the different areas of the game right now that Shane Pinto can touch? He can play on your power play. He can be an impactful player at 5-on-5, and I think he's becoming one of the best penalty killers in the league. So I think you have to be looking at Shane Pinto and considering him as one of your top 12 forwards in the U.S.
Yeah, I think he didn't hurt his cause by going and helping them win a world championship and playing a big role there as well. And like when you're talking about guys that you're I mean, they're taking 22 skaters this time, so it's 2 extra skaters than they had for the Four Nations. So you think 14 forwards, 8 defensemen, and when you look at that and you look at, like, he's a great team guy, so like you got to be cognizant of that, when you're taking forwards 12, 13, 14 potentially. I mean, he could play higher in the lineup, but you want someone that isn't gonna rock the boat if all of a sudden they're a healthy scratch of the 13th forward. And I do think he's a great team guy from that perspective. And he's just always in the right place. Like that's like positioning. He's such a smart player, and that was the first thing watching him when he came up to the NHL and was playing regular games. Is like, this guy just gets it. And he didn't really commit to hockey until late in his teens. He was playing other sports, and all of a sudden, like I get the sense just because of the fact that he was so good at it, he had to choose hockey because he knew that was his route to being a professional, and he just keeps getting better each and every year. And yeah, the offense is coming this year. That contract, which Ottawa was probably thinking, geez, do we want to pay him 7 at the start of the year or 7.5? And now it's like, well, he's going to be their highest paid player. Like
Nine
yeah,
plus.
like the way the Caps go on and the way he's playing, he's going to be their highest paid player.
Yeah,
But you need him in the fold, and yeah, I just think it's going to be hard for them to overlook Shane Pinto. And again, when you look at those intangibles, it's like Celebrini for me for Canada. Like he
yeah,
goes to the Worlds and he plays with Crosby and McKinnon. Now he shows what he can do, but also gets the endorsement of two of the best players on your team for the Olympics. Like I think that helped put him on the team. His play has as well, but that was a really smart decision by him and Pinto, who's committed multiple times to play for Team USA at the Worlds. They know what they're getting. And
yeah.
and so that combined with his play on the ice and a breakthrough season offensively, I think is probably going to be enough to get him on the team.
It's funny, how you describe Pinto. I see a lot of similarities with Oliver Kapanen. I really like his play away from the puck. He's always in the right position. I've watched him closely for 3 years, playing in multiple leagues, and just have always appreciated just how smart a player he is. And it's not always obvious. And Pinto was like that when he first came up too. I think that the stats didn't blow you away, but you just could appreciate just how good he was away from the puck and how well rounded. And with Barkov's injury, Oliver Kapanen 2 years ago at 20 years of age at the World Championships had 5 goals and was tied for top 5 in goal scoring at the World Championships at 20 years of age. And he's always played. He was the first line center 2 years in the World Juniors for Finland. He's always been good internationally for Finland. I think he's worked his way into the discussion from a Montreal standpoint of being named to the Finnish team, and with Laine probably not available either, right? There's 2 spots gone. I think Oliver Kapanen may surprise some people and be at the Olympics for Finland this year.
Yeah, that's a scenario I could see if he continues to play the way that he has, and like we've been saying, so much of it is form right now, and recency bias, whatever. A guy creates a good impression off the bat, and that seems to go a long way. To me right now, I agree with AJ. I think Montreal needs a center above Kapanen and behind Suzuki, because I think at this point, if Kapanen's your third line center, and I mean even over long term, if you can find somebody to play between those two and Kapanen's your third line guy, that's a pretty good lineup.
I have argued it, and I mean Anthony Cirelli was a second line center. I see Kapanen as an Anthony Cirelli clone, basically. Mm-hmm. Chandler Stevenson was a second line center on a cup winner. Braden Shen was a second line center on a cup winner. Sam Bennett. None of these guys were 50 plus point scorers. What they were was really smart and good away from the puck. And, like in Cirelli's case, he had Stamkos on his wing. Stamkos could concentrate on, his offense and scoring. I see Kapanen as that type of center. And I really think you need a balance. Everyone seems to discount him. Like he's playing well with Demidov, and he's so good away from the puck. And again, I've really watched him closely. I think most people are not appreciating just how good he is away from the puck. Mm. And I think he can be the guy that centers out that line. He's shown it so far offensively that he can, he can produce. He's on 55-point pace, which is better than Cirelli, Stevenson, all these guys as second line centers on teams where I really think it's important to have a two-way second line center. And it's why Pinto has become Ottawa's second line center, because he's better away from the puck than Cousins. Ultimately, that's the main reason. And I personally, I think it's a mistake for them to go out and say, well, let's get this 35-year-old Kadri with an $8 million contract who is decline. His stats are on the decline. He's on pace for minus 53 this year. He's got 3 goals. He scored 1 last night. Okay, fine. Kapanen has 4 goals, $900,000 salary. They can pick up another piece at a different position where I think that they need to fortify too. I'm not. I say you wait till the trade deadline, and if we see Kapanen cool off here some, and he doesn't keep playing the way he has been, and the Canadiens are first, second, right at the top, then yes, if somebody comes available, not Kadri, I don't like that salary and the declining asset. I could see them adding a center, but right now I think you wait and see. Like, I know it's only 11 games in, and it could go 2 ways, right? Kapanen could keep improving, keep putting up good stats, and if he does, I don't think they need. And Doc is a factor too, right? If he keeps bouncing back, you've got a pretty good 2-3 punch there that I don't know that needs to be upgraded necessarily. But that's again, I'm the president of the Oliver Kapanen fan club, so there might be a little bit of bias there.
I have zero confidence in Kirby Dach. Sorry, he's the Josh Norris of the Montreal Canadiens without the goals.
Yeah, no, I get it, but if he can stay healthy, he was a top 3 pick. Before his knee injuries, he really was looking good. Like that season before he blew out his knee, I thought we were seeing, and especially his play away from the puck, I thought we were seeing the potential of, this guy was a top 3 pick, and we were seeing that potential. But yeah, he's the Y factor on the club, and I agree. I think if they do get a center, it's more so because of the question marks of him than Oliver Kapanen. But hey, also, if Kapanen is your third line center, I get that. I get that too. That's pretty. I think that's pretty good. So I think there's 2 ways of looking at it. Certainly, from my standpoint, I can't see the Canadiens going after Kadri. What do you think, AJ?
I think they look. I think they potentially look somewhere else. I'm just going to jump in because I got another thought too, AJ. Just the Demidov thing is interesting to me. Like they've had a little bit of chemistry since the beginning of the season, and I guess I look at that 2 ways, and I think that's great. If you get 2 young players who have a connection, and you can be in a situation where because of that synergy that they have, they both elevate and they're greater than the sum of their parts. I watched Demidov play, and I guess sometimes I wonder, like, how much better could he be with a little more veteran center playing with him with a little bit of offensive upside, and could Demidov be even better than playing with another rookie? So I mean it definitely bears watching, because I think it can go both ways. It might wind up that those guys just have a fantastic connection, and it helps Kapanen elevate, helps Demidov elevate. But I also, in the back of my mind, there's been times when I've been watching them play, and I'm like, wow, I wonder what Demidov could do playing with like a Suzuki type player as well.
And I suppose when they were both breaking in, people in Boston wondered, well, I wonder what Brad Marchand could do with a veteran center beside him, beside Patrice Bergeron. But that seemed to work out okay. But I mean, and I don't say that Oliver Kapanen is the next Patrice Bergeron, but I see a lot of similarities there. An underappreciated all-around game, much like Shane Pinto, who we're seeing the breakout this year offensively. That Kapanen is that type of player. Now, whether he ever reaches that, he's 22 years old, and who knows, right? But there are different ways of looking at it. certainly the fact that he's on an entry-level contract, if he can play and show that he can, you know, he can do the job, and him and Demidov continue to have great chemistry, that frees up money for them to, you know, maybe get
and you know the luxury
hole.
The luxury that the Habs have right now, they don't need to rush into anything. The Kapanen Demidov thing is working, so you know let it play out. At this point, AJ always likes to say he likes 20 games before making any kind of judgments on teams. I mean, let this play out and see where it goes. And ultimately, to your point, Grant, you know, maybe they continue to elevate. Maybe they continue to have the kind of success that they're having now for the rest of the season. And like you said, that gives them the opportunity maybe to contemplate adding somewhere else, because like you said, you're only spending $900,000 on your second line center. You're going to have some flexibility maybe to help yourself in another area.
Yeah. I like Kadri. I'm going to disagree with you a little bit on that. I think he'd add a lot. I think he's their best player.
Kadri, but he's 35 years old, AJ, and he is on the decline.
Is he? I don't see it.
Well, he's not going to be the first line center on Montreal. He
doesn't have to
be 20 minutes a night. He's not going to be on the top power play.
Nor do you want him to be.
Going to go down. I don't know. They played against each other, Kapanen and Kadri head to head the other night. Kapanen outplayed him. Like, it wasn't even close.
But it's not about one game, Grant.
All Kadri did was flop around and try to draw penalties. No, I know it's only one game, but
to me, you're talking about a Stanley Cup winning center.
Kadri 3 years ago, yes. 4 years ago or 5 years ago, when he was on a cup winner, when he was 30 years old and in his prime, I don't think he's the same player he was then. He's number one center in Calgary because they got nothing else right now. But if he goes to Montreal, I don't know. I don't see somebody that gets more than 50 points. And I think Kapanen at 900,000 instead of 8 million, not with 3 years left on that, when he'd be 37, 38. Like, I don't know that Montreal's window to win a cup is necessarily this year. And Kadri, it's only going to be a diminishing asset as far as I'm concerned over the next 3 years. And I just, I'm also not crazy about upsetting the chemistry. They've got a young team. They've got a tight-knit team. You bring in Nazem Kadri, I don't know that that's necessarily the right fit chemistry-wise on this team. Why? They're on top of the standings. Kapanen's playing great. Demidov and him have chemistry. Why mess with that right now unless they start to take a dive? But I do know that. Go ahead.
Yeah, Grant. I just think it's because it's not about points. Like, if he's a 45, 50 point guy, he's going to help that team. He's like, I don't see the diminishing asset right now.
Right.
Like, when I watch Calgary, Calgary is a team, like, they play so structured. And, I watched them quite a bit last year. He's their best player. He's their, and you could say, and like, he doesn't have to be your best player in Montreal. He doesn't even have to be close.
Right.
You're just bringing in a guy that's won a Stanley Cup, that's competitive. Like, when I hear, the Calgary people talking about Kadri, he's been the ultimate teammate. He's not in any rush to leave, but I think he would fit in perfectly. Yeah. Like, I actually think 29-year-old Kadri might not fit in as well, but 35-year-old Kadri, who has matured, we all know about some of the antics in the past, but he has matured. Like, I think that would be exactly what the Montreal Canadiens need, because he doesn't have to be the guy. He can just fit in, kind of like Marchand in Florida, and help a real young group with the experience that he's got. But that's just me.
Yeah, well, and again, you're totally discounting the fact that Oliver Kapanen is a fantastic defensive player and great away from the puck. I don't think you've seen him enough to appreciate
it. But it's nothing to do with Kapanen. If you got Kapanen at 35 if you got Kadri at 35 and Kapanen at 20, and he's coming in and he's a real 22. Positive influence in the room, is Kapanen not going to grow even more because of the mentorship, kind of like a Claude Giroux and what he's brought to Ottawa?
I prefer the mentorship from Nick Suzuki than to Nazem Kadri. I think he's getting plenty of mentorship already from Nick Suzuki. But yeah, I don't mentorship from Kadri. Those two words I don't put them in the same sentence. And but obviously, you know, I don't hear how good he has been as a leader and an influence in Calgary. And I'm probably wrong on that. I'm making a broad assumption just from seeing, and I mean, it didn't help that the game that the Habs played against Calgary, he was friggin' diving and you know, just being the jerk Kadri that I've seen in the past, and thinking, well, this guy really hasn't grown up. But again, that's just one game, as you say, AJ, and you make some salient points there. They may consider him. I think it's because of the diminishing asset, because their window is now till, you know, the next 5 years, and not necessarily this year that they win a cup. You know, that hurts them down the road. I think having an $8 million 36-year-old center who I think it will be diminishing and a diminishing asset when it could be helped in other spots in the lineup. But they may consider it. There's a hot rumor there that they might be. There aren't going to be many available. Calgary's at the bottom of the standings, right? Um, there aren't many top two centers that are on the market, and it'll be a team that's out of the playoff. Do the Canadiens want to add a veteran or two? Probably. So there are reasons why it would make sense, and I get your points.
One more point on this. I just feel like, and we don't know if Barkov's even going to be ready for the playoffs, but the one thing in watching the Stanley Cup final last year between Florida and Edmonton is, as that series progressed, it became apparent to me that Florida was going to win because they looked like a team with 3 first lines. So if that's the bar right now, which is like they've won 2 Stanley Cups and they've won 3 straight Eastern Conferences, that you need to compete with a team that looks like they've got 3 first lines. Why would you not? Even with Kapanen, like that's a bonus right now.
Yeah.
And like even with Kapanen, like if that's the one thing I think about Ottawa is, okay, how do you match up with Florida? How do you match up with Edmonton? How do you match up with, like, because it's not about matching up with Calgary or Boston or those teams. How do you match up with the top 6 or 7 in the league? And I think you need probably 3 really good centermen, and the fact that Kapanen is at that level right now is a bonus, and it's fantastic. But I still think, like, if I'm Montreal, I'm not looking at how do I beat Toronto, how do I beat Boston. I'm looking at how do I beat Florida, and to me, I think the one area, like, I think they're strong. I'm with you. I think they're really strong on the wing. They're really strong on D. They should have 2 pretty good goaltenders here. To me, if you've got the opportunity to give up, some future assets to get a guy that you know is going to be a top 9 center, and especially somebody with championship pedigree, and it doesn't have to be Kadri, but how many of those other guys are out there? And so that's all I'd be looking at if I was Montreal.
And I guess Doc is the Y factor there, and again, they're not. I don't think they have to be in a rush here. If he, I see you shaking your head. If he keeps improving and is looking good and becomes starts to reach that potential that we think is there, then you've got 3. You know, him and Bolduc, and if they pick up another winger, they've got 3 pretty good top lines. But yes, I get your point, and we'll see down the stretch. I still think that they're a team that is looking not only to this year but to the future, and I'm not sure that Kadri would be the guy that they would pursue. But what are your thoughts, CJ?
Well, I do think that if as the season unfolds, and that's the thing, we're going to be a dozen games into the season tomorrow.
Yeah.
Great discussion. And teams are having these kind of discussions. It's what hockey people do. Not no matter where, at what point you are in the season, there's that constant evaluation going on. What do we need to be better? What do we need to get to the next level? I think even if Kapanen and Demidov continue to have the chemistry that they have, I think it's a big ask going into the playoffs to AJ's point, which I think is a good one, when you're measuring yourself against who you think the other contending teams are going to be. I just feel like that's a big ask, and it's not specific to Kapanen. It's specific to rookies in the league when you're asking them to go up against veteran guys who have won Stanley Cups. That's a tough matchup for those guys. So to my point, you have to see it as the season unfolds. If Montreal continues to be near the top of the standings, and the decisions made, like, you know what, it's wide open this year. Some of the formerly elite teams have slipped in the Eastern Conference. We've moved up, and you think that this is a great opportunity to win a couple of rounds in the playoffs, or maybe even go farther than that, then I think you do look at adding some insulation. And I think that's probably what they're missing, is like a veteran guy that you can look at and say, we know we can count on this guy going up against another team's elite group of forwards. I think it's a big ask to have rookies on your second line.
Yeah.
Make a huge contribution for you when you're getting into, and again, we're getting way ahead of ourselves here, when you're starting to get into the second round of the playoffs, to expect rookies to be able to carry the load. I think as an organization, you probably owe it to those kids to bring in some help, that it won't all be all on them, and you're increasing the chances of you going even farther and those kids getting more positive experience out of it.
So what you're saying is Oliver Kapanen isn't Jonathan Toews. Yeah.
Not yet.
Jonathan Toews, obviously.
He might be equal to the Jonathan Toews that's playing right now, but
right.
Not
but like at 21, nobody was questioning that he could lead Chicago. I do see a lot of similarities between the Chicago team that won that first cup back and this Canadiens team. Not saying that they can win it, but there are some similarities there. Certainly, Oliver Kapanen is not Jonathan Toews. Don't get me wrong on that. He did lead the. I know it's only the Finnish Hockey League, but at 20 years of age, he led the Finnish Hockey League in playoff scoring. I think people are underestimating just how good this guy is, because he's so smart, and that can overcome your lack of experience, your lack of playoff pedigree at the NHL level, if you're as smart a player as he is. And I think as the season will go along, the people will begin to appreciate a little more just how good Oliver Kapanen is, and that it's not just a quick start because he's playing with a budding superstar in Demidov. But interesting discussion, gentlemen. We've been at it here now. We didn't even get into Lansdowne. I was there in 76, Peter Lee night, when they had 10,000 people in the stands. They've never equaled that again. I think the fire marshal may not have been at that game. But to go from 9,300 seats to 5,800 from a hockey perspective, just quickly, guys, maybe you could expand on this. Obviously, the PWHL team isn't necessarily happy about that. What are your thoughts on a $500 million project where you go from a 9,300 seat capacity to 5,800?
Go ahead.
I think number one, I don't think capacity is 93 now, just because I think
85.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's in that 83 to 85 range. Yeah. But you're right. I mean, it's less. It's from a 67s perspective and a concert perspective and a blackjacks perspective, and getting some of those other events, those kind of mid-range events, I don't think it's a factor. Clearly it could be with the PWHL.
Yeah.
Look, in a perfect world, I'd like it to be 7,500. Capacity, I think they say with standing room and kind of party zones and stuff is going to be in and around 66. I'd like that to be in an ideal world 1,000 higher, but like my message to the PWHL would be if you're outgrowing that, then go and team up with the Ottawa Senators in the new rink at Le Breton.
Sure.
Like I feel like there's a lot of teams in this league, like New York and Boston to start with, that don't draw close to what capacity is going to be in the new arena. So like even if it's a temporary solution until like if you keep getting 8,500 a game, and one of the things I was told, Josh Pringle had this from CTV, they got more than 6,600 I think 4 times out of 13 regular season games last year. So no doubt it's going to affect things in the playoffs, but game in, game out, I don't feel like there's going to be a lot of PWHL fans that are left in the cold. Now that could change if it continues to grow and you're averaging 8,000 a game for the next couple of years in the regular season. Well, then they have a decision to make. Do they go to a different spot? Do they go to Le Breton if that Sens rink gets built? But yeah, I mean, it's not a perfect project. To me, the first thing I'd like to see from a football perspective is a roof on the north side stands, and that costs about an extra 40 million. But if you're asking me if I think the better option right now is to go ahead with this plan or to basically say no, I think it's a pretty easy answer, because otherwise, like, that thing's going to be sitting as a white elephant, dilapidated, if OSEG decides to walk away, and we don't know that that's going to be the case if this thing doesn't get approved.
I feel like you've got flexibility in this marketplace, and when you think about hosting things like the World Junior Championship, you played some games at the Civic Center, you played some games at CTC, the big games at CTC. I think you're still going to have that flexibility when Finland and Sweden are playing. If you can draw close to 7,000 for that game at the small rink, good on you. But you've still got the flexibility of being able to play at the CTC, and again, I don't know about the details of the leases and everything else, but if the Charge make it to the final again and they feel like they could sell 12,000 tickets or 13,000 tickets, then play the final at the CTC. I know maybe OSEG's going to be pissed because now you're losing all those bodies from being in your new rink there. But I think you also have to recognize the realities that having another 10,000 seat rink at this point, I'm sure there's been a ton of research that's gone into this and trying to find out what that sweet spot is in terms of the marketplace. And it's not just the hockey and the sports that we talk about. I mean, they've obviously done the research and figured out that there's room for that kind of venue for attracting some of the smaller music acts, comedy acts, whatever, that you need a venue of that particular size. And as AJ said, I think on the show, it was either yesterday or the day before, if you want to increase the seats, I don't know what it costs in terms of, let's put an extra 1,000 seats in. Is that $2 million more to a project? Is it 4? Is it 5? I don't know. You're raising the roof of a building. You're changing its whole profile. But I'm sure there's been a lot of research done to try and figure out what the sweet spot is in terms of the number of seats that you need. And I think you also want to make sure that you maintain interest in your product and demand for your tickets. Like, I think you got a better chance of selling out your regular season at 6,600 seats than you do at 8,600 because you're going to have that built-in demand.
Well, I don't think the 67s are going to be getting I've been going to the rink for the past decade, and I don't think they've sold out any games, or maybe a couple. If they have success in the playoffs, perhaps. But I think that's a good size rink for the 67s. I think the 5,800 makes sense, right? But also, like, who owns the charge? I know that the counselor was saying, well, if you want us to have more seats, why don't you you got billionaire owners or whatever, why don't you pony up some money if you want it to be that many seats? What?
I think that's a fair ask. As far as I know, AJ, they're still owned by the league. Like
Yeah, the league
Right.
owns all 8 teams.
Right. The
Yeah.
league owns all of the league owns all of the franchises.
LA Dodgers owner?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't mind that question being asked at all, that demand being put on them. If you're not happy with the capacity, either go and negotiate with the Senators to go and play at the CTC, or ante up to increase the capacity. Like I was just saying, there's a price tag attached to every number of seats that you want to increase the capacity of the building. There's a price tag attached to that.
Do you think it's sustainable? Like, the new product, it's been a great, the support has been fantastic. There might also be the thought that, is this sustainable? Will they still keep getting as large a crowds as they did with the new product being out there? What do you think, AJ?
I do, because I think it's a different demographic. You go to the charge
Yeah.
games, and like a lot of times you go to sporting events and you see the same people at the same events. Like good on the charge. They're getting a lot of women to their games. So like from that perspective, and they seem to be pretty diehard, happy, like win or lose. Like obviously winning, you're gonna get more people, especially playoffs, all that type of stuff. But I don't get the sense like that the vast majority of like hardcore charge fans are gonna be like booing their team off the ice if they lose their 4 straight games. So like that's it's a different dynamic, and I think it probably leads to more consistent turnout, game in, game out, year in, year out. But you got to wait, kind of like you need to wait in the NHL 20 games before you truly see, okay, who are the pretenders, who are the contenders. You do need to wait a few more years before you say, okay, this is the way it's going to be. It's encouraging. I'd be very encouraged if I was running this league right now, just based on what they've seen in interest level. I think the interest level has surprised them out of the gate, and hence expansion to 2 more cities in Seattle and Vancouver. And I think they're going to go beyond that. But yeah, I will say I do think it's sustainable, but like with the caveat of, until you're in a market with any team for 5-6 years, you don't really know until that honeymoon period is worn off exactly how it's going to play out.
Yep.
But just the different demographic, I
True.
think leads me to believe that this is something that should be sustainable.
Yeah. You wait 20 games in and see who are the Kadris and who are the Kapanens. Okay, gentlemen, I'm I'm going to end it on this. Who wins the ball game tonight?
I'll say Dodgers win tonight. Blue Jays win in 7. Yamamoto. Like I'm not a Blue Jays fan, but I'm amazed with how this group is just like, they play as a team. They look like a team of destiny. They just respond to any type of lows. The resiliency that they have is so impressive. So I'll say they get one more piece of adversity thrown at them. Yamamoto throws a gem tonight, and the Blue Jays find a way to respond again in Game 7.
I'm going to take the Jays second time around, seeing Yamamoto. I'm sure they watched a lot of video on the plane coming back from California, and I don't think he's going to have. He was almost perfect in that game. I don't know if he can rise to that level again, especially with so much emphasis now put on, after batters get to see pitchers repeated times, they start figuring them out. That's why they take starters out now after 4 or 5 innings. They don't want the batters to see them for a third time. I think they're going to have much better luck against Yamamoto, so I'll take the Jays in 6.
Okay. Well, Yeah, I'm going to say the Jays figure them out tonight. I'm with CJ there, and I'm a little bit more of a Jays fan, obviously, than AJ. All right, gentlemen, it's been
Just slightly.
yeah, it's been a pleasure.
I just want
And
the Expos back.
I
And I know
know.
CJ feels that way too.
Hey, I'm an Expos fan too, but
Anybody got an
Canada.
extra $5 billion kicking around?
Yeah, well, hey, we can only hope that the Expos come back. I'm again more rumors that it could be happening, but there's been those rumors for what 25 years now. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on. And if Kapanen gets a hat trick, I'll invite you back on Monday, AJ.
This
Sound good?
isn't. Where did you come up with an anti-Kapanen stuff, Grant? I don't have anything negative to say about Kapanen.
I'm just having fun. Okay, my friend. Thanks for coming
All
on,
right.
guys.
See you, Grant.
Good seeing you,
Okay.
Grant.
Bye.